Now, describe the political system of Rome in a way a child would be able to understand. Who's got one for me? Flynn.
Old dudes get together, they rule Rome.
Old dudes get together and they rule Rome.
Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. Can we extend it in any way? Let's tell a good fairy tale to the kids. Okay, it's got to be a castle somewhere.
Alright, off the top of my head, Rome is a republic. To be part of this government republic, you need to be over 30 years old and really well experienced. That's it.
Yeah, that's
all
not too bad. Have we got any other attackers? No, we're all pretty happy with that.
And if you're not skilled enough, you gotta basically control everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so we know that Rome's a republic. We know that it's controlled by old men. Okay. What word do we get in the English language for old men?
Senate.
Senile.
Oh,
Okay.
Senate.
Senile, which we get from Senate, which means group comprised of old men.
So you're not Santa's son.
Yeah. Okay. So when lovely grandparents, God love them, are going a bit senile, okay, and they're flipping the gear a bit, that is where we get the word from, because they're starting to act pretty much old in a way, okay? So, if we're doing this, okay, we know that there's a republic, we know that there is a social hierarchy, okay? If I use simpler words, what would I use instead of hierarchy? Social ladder, okay? We can also use structure, okay? But ladder is sort of like the simplest way of putting it, okay? Who's at the bottom? Slaves,
Peasants, plebeians,
plebeians.
tribunes.
What did you say, Dan? They're not part of the social system. They're just a position. Good try, though. There's someone before patricians. Starts with an E. The equestrians, okay? If you've ever watched the Olympics, you'd know that there is a side sport called equestrian, okay, which is the guys riding horses, okay? So the equestrians are the knights of the republic, pretty much, okay? Then we have patricians, yes. Now in Imperial Rome, there's one above it. What is it? The imperial family, basically. Yeah, you are right, imperator, okay, or the imperial family. Okay. Now, there's a couple of them in between there. For example, there's one in between slaves and plebeians, and it's called freedmen. Anyone want to guess what they are? Freed slaves. Okay, and they become a big issue later on in the Republic, and also especially very big in the new empire. So, like the beginning of it. Okay, it all sounds like a Star Wars film, doesn't it? Okay, so that is our basic political system. So what we will go through is we'll keep on going through that Prezi that we were going through before. So if memory serves, we were on the Adels, if memory serves. Is that right, girls? Yes, we finished the Adel plebs.
Hold on. Yeah, we
Reese, do you have this sheet?
We finished Tribunus Plebeius, tribute of the plebs up to Praetor.
Praetor. Can anybody remember what a praetor does?
Something.
They judge who.
They are judges.
Judge.
Good. They also have a special ability that very few other people can do. Can anyone remember what that is? They can lead what?
Armies.
They can lead armies.
I knew
Because
that.
they have
Power. Money.
Imperium.
Authority.
Yes. And if we say power in Latin, what is it?
Something with a P.
Potestas. Potestas. Okay? So, I'm just going to turn off that center light just so we can sort of see what's going on. Alright, so let's have a look at the praetor. Okay? Praetor, either one is fine. Quick facts, you've got 8 praetors per year. They are sometimes allowed to keep their power after leaving office, called a pro-praetor. Okay? If you ever see the word pro in front of something, in front of a political position in Rome, it means that they once were that thing. And in Rome, if your position is high enough, you still maintain some of those powers even after you leave office. What do you think is the most important pro? proconsul, okay? And proconsuls have a very, very important position in ancient Rome because they're one of the very few people that can become governors of provinces. Okay, you basically must be a proconsul to become a governor. Okay, and if you're a governor in ancient Rome, that's where you make all your money. Okay, they are sometimes manage a province, sometimes. Okay, most of the time will be a consul, and they have curule magistracy. Bleh. What do you think that means? What's a curule?
Argument.
It's an actual physical thing. The seat, yeah, okay?
Good.
So they could like sit on the seat.
They could sit on the seat, okay? And magistracy, what is a magistrate?
They do stuff.
We had a specific definition for it. A magistrate is a what of the government? An officer of the government or official. Either one is fine, okay? So basically, they're an important officer of the government and they're afforded the right to sit in a curule, okay? And they also, as we were just saying, wield imperium.
What positions could sit in the seat?
Quite a number of them, okay? But not every position that could sit in a curule could sit in it all the time. There were certain positions that could sit in curules within the Senate House, and they were very, very important positions, so things like the consul, for example. So there's sort of different ways that you can sit in it as well. Okay? So, what's their duties? Well, they manage Rome and the consul's absent. We have a word for this in English. It starts with R, someone that manages the kingdom when the king is gone.
Regent.
A regent, okay? So these guys basically are the regents of Rome when the consuls aren't there, okay? They are serving in the law courts. They convene and preside over the Senate and assemblies, and they lead the military when necessary. Okay, there's also another job that leads the military called a legate. Okay? But praetors tend to be the ones that are leading. Okay?
So Imperium.
So let's go over a bit about what Imperium is again, okay, in a bit more detail. So Imperium is a special type of power. It was primarily a military power. So when you're seeing Imperium, it means that they actually do have the ability to command troops. They're one of the few people in Rome that has that ability. Okay? Why? Because you don't want everyone having the ability to lead troops in Rome, because that's just a recipe for disaster. Okay? It is given to an individual and it's given by the Roman state. The Roman state being what? The Senate. Okay? So only the Senate can give you Imperium. Okay? It's meant to protect the Roman state and its interests. And if you have Imperium, here are some of the cool things that you can do. You can order executions, floggings, and imprisonment.
So you're a cop.
You're judge, jury, and executioner.
Okay.
Okay?
Look at American police force.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's limited within the city of Rome, but it's unlimited outside of it. So if you have Imperium and you're managing the province of Gaul, France, okay? They're basically trusting you to do whatever you need to keep order there. Okay? You've basically got a blank check on how much authority that you have. But within the actual limits of Rome, your Imperium is checked. Okay? Checked by other people that have Imperium. But it's also so everyone that's walking around in Rome that has Imperium doesn't just do whatever they want. Okay? So it's fine outside of Rome, but inside Rome, you sort of have to be careful. Do you think there's people that don't go by that rule? Which ones do you think they are? Which ones do you think sort of have unlimited Imperium?
The consuls?
Not even the consuls.
The
The emperor to a certain degree, okay? But if it's Republican Rome, who do we get before the emperor? Starts with a D. The dictator, okay? The dictator is sort of one of the very few people that has unlimited imperium inside Rome. Okay? Because obviously the dictator is elected when there's a crisis in Rome. Okay? They are symbolised by lictors, which we do know, okay, carrying the fasces, which are the bundles of whipping rods which included an axe outside Rome. Okay? So we can see here, you've got the consul, okay, and he's surrounded by the lictors, and the lictors' main role in this case is to clear the path for the consul of Rome. Okay, and they've also got the axes, so if someone doesn't move, okay? So, we talked about this in one of our very first lessons. The more lictors stalking you, the more important you were. Praetors got 6, consuls had 12, and if you were a dictator, you got 24. Why do you think 24 specifically? Use your maths.
Because you're worth double the consuls.
Yeah, you got the power of 2 consuls.
Yeah.
Okay, the other consul can't check you, so you've got double the power. Okay? Fasci is where Mussolini, the fascist Italian during World War II, got the name for his political party, fascism. Okay? And fasci are still used as a symbol of political power. Just check out statues and monuments if you don't believe me. So you can see here the famous statue of Lincoln inside Washington, D.C. He's resting on 2 bundles of fasci. Okay? Because it's meant to represent state authority. Right? Alright, for our second last one, the consul, okay? There are 2 per year, and it's the highest office in Rome. I think that should have a misnomer of most often the time, okay? They often became proconsul after their term of office and governed province. Okay, they have curule magistry, and of course, they wield imperium. Pardon me. They came with a permanent Senate seat if they didn't have one already. Okay, so it's sort of like what we were talking about the other day. You can become consul without already having a Senate seat. It's just very rare. Okay?
How often did they change the consul?
Every year. Yeah. So it's a pretty fluid thing. Does anyone want to guess also why they changed them every year?
So they don't get too comfortable in the position of power?
That's certainly one reason. But what do you think they needed?
Money.
Proconsuls.
Oh.
Because they're their governors. So if you only have a consul every 10 years, then you're not going to have many proconsuls, which means you're not going to have the governors to go out to the provinces and look after it all. Okay? And when Augustus and his adopted son Tiberius take the throne, they actually reduce this to 6 months to make sure that you keep on basically churning out proconsuls. Okay? Non-patricians, so if you were becoming a consul without being a patrician, become novi homines or novus homo, they were new men among the nobility. Okay, so if you somehow managed to get to consulship without being a patrician, you would be counted as these new men. Okay? Their duties included convening and presiding over the Senate assemblies, introducing and administer legislation, serving as generals in wars, representing Rome in foreign affairs, and appointing or serving as dictator. So effectively, it's like the Prime Minister. Okay? And there's a lot of benefits to having 2 consuls or 2 prime ministers at once. For example, especially in the ancient world, you don't have good means of communication. Okay? What having 2 consuls allows you to do is basically you can leave one consul in Rome and let the other consul deal with foreign business abroad. Okay? It has its benefits. the problem is that they can often fight with each other though. Okay?
We're trying to take consoles, wouldn't that be like a Romulus and Remus kind
A Romulus and Remus situation, absolutely it does devolve into that a couple of times. And you can really see that when you get to Caesar. Because does anybody remember who the consul of Caesar was that he famously fought? It was in the readings, last topic.
Hold on.
What was the first letter of his name?
P.
Penelope.
Penelope. I thought you were going to say Penelope. I was like, definitely not that one. Pompey the Great.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
I knew that, yeah.
And this is sort of the problem. They go into civil war with each other. They're both consuls. And they're both sort of going, no, you're wrong, and then vetoing each other. And it causes the civil war. Okay? And of course, our lovely Senate. Okay? They are a permanent governing body and only included distinguished Roman citizens, patricians, magistrates, some military officers. Consuls got an automatic seat once they finished their term, and members were voted in or out by the censors during the census every 5 years. So you could actually lose your Senate position. Okay? It wasn't a birthright. Not every patrician had a Senate seat. Can anybody remember the number of Senate seats that there were?
300.
300. Okay, there's certainly more patricians in Rome than just 300. Okay, and it's not like the Spartan 300 either. They're all old men and they all fall over if a sneeze. Okay, so we actually saw this position come up a lot. Censors. We didn't actually explain it. Anyone want to guess what the censors actually do?
They made the census.
They made the census, congratulations.
So
Yes, they administered it.
So they collected data on everyone.
They collected data, yeah, absolutely.
But is it more like a vote?
Yeah, it's more like a vote, absolutely. And these guys would also be in control of the vote, okay? These guys, we get our English word censor from it. To censor something, to forbid people from speaking, okay? Now this isn't exactly what these guys did, but they would be sort of the people that were responsible for making sure that the senators of Rome were basically not degenerates, not scum. So if you were found out to be scum and you're very, very corrupt, everyone in Rome's a tiny bit corrupt, but if you were sort of outright corrupt, then these censors could also remove you from your position. Now, during Augustus's times, and this is sort of something that we'll look at power image, Augustus gets very, very, the word that we look at is puritanical, which basically tries to make Rome a pure place again. So he sees all these senators, they have their wives, but then they have like 50 mistresses. Augustus basically comes in and goes, right, you only sleep with your wife, that's it. We had enough of all these affairs. You're making the Senate look bad. You're making us look like a bunch of dirty old men. So he sends out the censors and starts basically purging corrupt senators. Okay? So they have a pretty important role. All right. And I think that might be it. Yes! Congratulations, girls. We went through all of that. Yay!
So go back to census real quick.
Go back to census real quick.
Alright, I need to get that point down there.
And while you're doing that, I might actually just do the roll like I meant to.
Also, can we hear the morning announcements?
Yes, you certainly can. Okay. Flynn,
Yeah.
Chelsea, Natea, Sarah, Mamia, Sonia,
Yeah.
Vivian,
Here.
Manta, Arisha, Maeve,
Yeah.
Reem,
Here.
Marsha,
Yeah.
Zeta, and Sanwin, no. Is there like a science exam on or something today? Because that's usually when most people are away.
So I'm assuming it's just cold and
There
no one wants
actually
to
is
get
a
out of bed.
science exam on today.
Really?
Investigating.
Every time. Is it?
No, so but not everyone. No, my guess is that everyone's just cold. Cause I woke up today and I was like, do I really want to go to school?
Quite often, Vivian, I've found it out. When there's a science assessment or a science examination,
Nobody wants to show.
So it's because
I like those.
science exams are the most difficult exams.
Oh, they're also very big.
how dare you?
They are, sir.
I'm going to make your exam extra difficult now.
No, sir. No, see, ancient, I expect one essay question. Right?
I'm gonna put in 3 now.
Really?
Thank you, Vivian.
You're welcome, guys. You're welcome, guys.
Uh,
No, but we're building skill, you know? Build those essay skills.
Bro, shut up. You already have a fix, girl.
Yeah, true.
It's like really complicated.
What we'll do, girls,
Guys, it's still-
is we will read over this, okay? We're going to talk about the Pontifex Maximus. I meant to actually print this out for you, girls. I'm sorry. Okay, but it's small enough that we can read together.
I'll
I
zoom
will
in.
also get some of you to read because, God forbid, you hear my voice again for another entire lesson.
So you zoomed in when I zoomed in.
Exactly.
Alright, wait, I'll zoom out.
Okay?
There we go.
Alright. Has anyone ever heard the word Pontifex Maximus before?
No. I know gluteus maximus.
Yeah, you heard
means bum.
Maximus. Well, what does Maximus mean?
Big.
Big or high. Okay, so if you're using something Maximus, it's basically saying the highest or the biggest.
Yeah.
Okay, so your gluteus maximus in your body is basically like a big something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay? So,
Are you gonna give that to us next lesson? Or
yeah, I'll print it out and give it
Oh,
to you
good, so I
fully.
don't have to take notes.
Okay? Alright, so Pontifex Maximus, meaning Roman High Priest. Oh, so I thought you had your hand up. What position in the world still uses that title?
The
The Pope of the Catholic Church, okay? Pontiff Maximus, okay? Literally meaning High Priest. The Pontifex Maximus was not a real magistrate. He did not serve for a fixed period, but for life. And he remained officially a citizen. As the title suggests, the Pontifex Maximus was the greatest or chairman of the College of Pontifices, or priests. They were responsible for the Roman state cult as a whole, and for several cults in particular, via the cults that had no priestly college of their own, such as the Augurs, the Zenseviri, Sacrificundis, and the Faetales. Okay? If you're a science background in biology, you might actually notice some of those words. Okay?
No.
No?
I don't
Just
do
outright
biology.
no. Okay?
So I dropped science the first chance I got.
So augurs,
I ran away.
augurs tends to mean like omens and signs from heaven. Okay? You didn't have to know that one if you're a biology. Okay? Decemviri, anyone want to?
December.
Yeah?
Cold
Oh.
winter.
12.
Not 12,
10.
10. Okay? Because the Roman calendar used to have 10
And then they added 2 months.
because Julius Caesar and Augustus screwed it up. Okay? And like, no, I want a month. So we used to have this perfectly working calendar. Okay? So they are more than likely something to do with 10. I can't actually remember. Sacrus. Does anybody know what sacrus might mean?
Sacred.
Sacred. Okay? Faciundis. Okay? If I had to have a guess, I would say related to the word fecund or fecundity, meaning fertile, basically.
That's
Okay?
what I thought the other word meant.
Yeah,
The tails.
I was also looking at that one as well. I'm going to say it has something to do with fertility or something as well. A lot of these ancient cults tend to have something related to fertility. Okay? Alright, Vivian, do you want to read the first one for me?
Yes. Okay. The number of pontifex continued to grow. There were originally 5 real pontifexes over the Lex Olgania,
Yeah.
230 to 99 BCE. After Sulla 15 and after Julius Caesar 16, another member was the Rex Sacrarum, king of the sacrifices, who performed the religious acts that the king had usually done. There were 3 later 15 Flamines, special priests for the main gods, and there were 3 mysterious pontifii minors. Finally, the high priest was also responsible for the 18 priestesses of the goddess Vesta. This may have been the most important duty, and it comes as no surprise that the residence of the Pontifex Maximus, the Domus Republica, was
Ooh,
next to the
yeah.
monastery of these women.
Good. Okay. Rex, we know, is of course king. It's interesting how these monarchy titles still appear in Rome. Okay, they hate the monarchy, but they still got these little ones like king of the sacrifices. Okay, minores or minores. You want to guess what it means? Small, yeah. So lesser priests, basically. So these are the ones that serve under the high priest. Okay, and you have these sort of priests that all serve the individual gods. Okay.
Stay this way.
Okay, thank you. So, you also have all these different types of priests. Now, the goddess Vesta, okay, has specific priestesses that serve her, which are the Vestal Virgins. Sounds exactly like what it is, okay? Now, the Vestal Virgins are very, very important. They look after a sacred fire in Rome. And basically, if you touch one of them, and we all know how we're touching them, okay, you will die. Okay?
So nuns with a few more steps.
Nuns with a few more steps and a lot more fire. Okay?
Wait, so would they get killed, or was the belief that if you like did that, then you just
Bit of both.
die?
Their belief was that you'd be struck down by the gods, but if they found out you touched one, then they'd do the gods' work for them. Okay? So, touching a Vestal Virgin, forget your Romeo and Juliet, it's true love, but they're bound by position, no, you will die. Okay?
Alright.
Sonia, do you want to read the next one, darling?
The main task of the pontifices was to maintain the pax deorum, the peace with the gods. To obtain this goal, they gave advice to the magistrates, interpreted the omens, controlled the
Calendar, yeah.
calendar, and oversaw funerals. The Pontifex Maximus was responsible for a large collection of omens,
Annalus Maximi.
Every year he wrote down the celestial and other signs and added the events that had followed the omens so that the future generation would be able to better understand the divine will.
Very good, okay. Now, Pax Deorum, okay. We, of course, get our English word from this, deity, for gods, okay, Deorum, or date in Latin, okay, day. Now, Pax Deorum is actually quite important because remember, we are dealing with an ancient society. If something's going wrong in an ancient society, what do they often ascribe that to? Why is it happening?
The god's anger?
Yeah, the god's anger, okay? So, this position of high priest is actually quite important for the state and politics, okay? If the gods aren't happy with you, then bad things are going to happen. So you need to have a good high priest, okay? Now this word pax, we actually do see it quite a lot. There's a very famous saying associated with it. Does anybody know what it is?
Pack your bag.
Pack your bag.
Really?
Otherwise,
Oh,
yeah.
right?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought.
Jeez, no. Okay?
Peace.
Yes, so peace. Anyone want to guess what it is?
Peace for Rome.
Not peace for Rome,
Peace.
Roman peace.
Yes.
Okay? Basically, it's the idea that wherever the Romans go, they bring peace. Okay?
That's a lot.
Not in the terms of love and caring and things like that, in the terms of, right, if you start a fight with him, I'm going to cut your head off and I'm going to cut his head off, and then we're both going to go down to the village and cut everyone else's head off until nobody fights.
Wow.
That's Roman peace. But you've also got to think, for the ancient world, that's pretty impressive.
It is.
Okay, so the idea is that Rome brings stability wherever it goes.
Good Rome.
Okay? We also have Pax Mongolica. Anyone want to guess?
Mongolian peace?
Mongolian peace, okay? Which is Genghis Khan's way of doing what the Romans did, except Genghis Khan did it on a more severe level of, if one person in your city does something wrong, I'm going to burn down the entire city, kill everyone that's higher height than a wagon wheel, and then just take everyone else into slavery.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
one way to do it.
That is one way of doing it.
mean, man.
Genghis Khan is an amazing figure if you ever get the chance to research him.
No, I don't
Okay.
want to. He's mean.
It's cruel.
He's so cool.
Alright, Montage, next up, darling.
Until the Lex Augustus, all pontifices were patricians. This law introduced the possibility authority that plebeians were to be pontifex as well. The Pontifex Maximus was elected by the Comitia Tributa, an assembly of the people that was divided into voting districts. After 104 BCE, the ordinary pontifices were also elected. Until then, they had been created.
Good. Let's keep on going on. Husna, can I get you down?
Sure.
Harsha.
Is it?
Bloody names. Sorry, dear. Yep.
Julius Caesar was elected Pontifex Maximus in 63 BCE and kept the office until his death. The house where he spent the night before he was killed was the Domus Publica. After his death, Marcus Aurelius Lepidus became Pontifex Maximus. When he died, the Emperor Augustus became responsible for the state cult. He also put an end to the election of the pontifexes. From then on, a position in the College of Pontifexes was a sign of special imperial favor comparable to decoration and outrage.
Alright, now, this one is super duper important, okay? In English terms, who can explain what Augustus did? What did he do with the office of Pontifex Maximus? He basically said, right, no more elections for it. The office of Pontifex Maximus now will reside solely with the Princeps or Imperator. Okay? He makes it a imperial position. What do you think he's trying to do?
He's giving himself more importance.
More importance, and a word starting with L.
Legacy?
Not legacy.
Legion?
Legitimacy. Okay? He's basically saying, I am the connection between Rome and the gods. Okay? The gods speak through me. This is super duper important because he's basically saying the imperial family is the state religion. Okay? Rome's state religion does not now exist without the emperor. Okay?
So it's kind of like how the Roman Tsar Nicholas said, like, oh yeah, we're basically messengers of the gods or mandate of heaven.
Exactly right. Okay? It's like Christian royal families still do this today. Okay? The Queen of England is called Defender of the Faith. Okay? She is the head of the English Church. The head of the English Church is never chosen. It's always a royal family member. You have its administrative head, which is the Archbishop of Canterbury, okay, which is sort of like their version of Pope. But the head is always going to remain a royal family member. Okay? So Augustus is basically saying, Emperor, religion, Rome, same.
Yeah.
Okay? Can I please get Reem to read the next two, please?
The word pontifex is sometimes explained as bridge builder, but is in fact related to the
Etruscan?
Word pont, road, and means something like preparer of the road. The Pope still calls himself Pontifex Maximus. Because the Pontifex Maximus was not a real magistrate, he was not allowed to wear the toga with the purple border. However, he could be recognized by the iron knives.
Even I'm struggling with that one. Cecispita. Okay, good try. Alright, so, very important, like what we were saying before, he's the bridge builder, he connects you between the gods. Okay? In 381, the Roman Emperor Gratian was the first to decline the use of the title Pontifex Maximus. It was accepted by the Pope. Why do you reckon Gratian refused to accept it? What do you think he was by that time? Christian. So he didn't want to be the head of a pagan church, basically. Okay? Yeah. Good times all round. Alright.
Sir?
Yes.
You know Emperor Constantine?
Yes.
How he was like the first Christian emperor. Did he take that title?
I believe he did. Because there was still quite a number of pagans in Rome at that time. So he would have taken that title, but it would have been what would be an inactive title. He wouldn't have been very involved in it.
To be fair, Roman paganism's kind of cool.
Roman paganism is an amazing thing. It's very cruel, but it's amazing. Alright, So let's quickly answer these questions. How is the office of Pontifex Maximus different from other political roles in ancient Rome?
It wasn't elected by the Senate.
Wasn't elected by the Senate. It wasn't a what, starting with M? It wasn't a magistracy. Okay? And it was primarily a what role? Religious role. Fantastic. Okay? Number 2. How did Augustus change the role of Pontifex Maximus in Rome?
He
Go.
kind of made it like the imperial family.
Yep.
So that connected to the gods.
Yep. So we would say he folded it into the imperial position, and he also made it hereditary for the imperial family. Do we know what I mean by hereditary? Passed down generation to generation. Okay, from father to son and so forth. Okay? So, what we're actually going to start on now, Sunshines, is we're actually going to start on looking at Augustus specifically. And for the rest of this, it's all going to be about how everything relates to Augustus. Okay? So we've got basically the backdrop now. We know the background information that we need to understand Augustus. Now it's just Augustus all the way. Alright?
Yay.
Woo!
Woo! Guys,
Woo!
clap. No, okay.
Yeah, no.
You guys,
They failed you, Vivian. They failed
they
you.
failed me.
Alright, so I'm
It's
going
first period, that's why I said.
to actually
I
get...
would have done this fourth period.
That's because you're thin. There's a difference.
Yeah, I'm angsty. I need to rebel.
You're angsty.
That's basically.
No, I don't have a good version of this. That's a shame.
Oh well.
Oh well.
Augustus, who the bloody hell is that?
Yeah, who the bloody hell is he? Where the bloody hell are you?
Well, he invented August. I know that. Right?
So why do you remember like
True.
off-brand Adam Hills and with natural light?
Alright. So,
Presentation.
let's go, Sunshines. Let's look at who the bloody heck is Augustus. Yeah. Everyone say with me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. Once you can say that,
You're
110% Australian.
Yeah.
Okay? That should just be the Australian citizenship test.
Just
Repeat
kidding
after
me.
me. Yeah.
You always said it was Australian.
Okay.
You guys are like me.
Yeah. Once you can do that, and every single statement with a high point, where we go?
Yeah.
Why are we here? I like that chair. Okay? Fully Australian. Done.
Oh, that's how you do it.
Please
Yeah.
stop watching Adam
See,
Hills.
does that explain my accent? Because it's Arab.
Adam Hills is amazing. Alright, so, girls, what we'll do, first video, okay? That's the question for the video. Why was Augustus important to studying ancient Rome? So basically, you have to point out the significant stuff that he does for ancient Rome in changing it. Because significance almost always means some form of change. And I'll also set up the sound while I'm here.
Yeah, that would help.
That would help. Sometimes.
Ah,
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah. Alright. I have a dream, and it might actually work.
hey.
What I'm going to do in this class is talk about all the fundamental.
Okay.
Yeah, but when?
Alright.
Oh, it's a speedy. Is it the same guy that did the other videos? About
I believe it might be.
Okay, cool.
Augustus?
Octavius. Oh, so can we watch Night in the Museum?
Yeah,
Octavius
man,
is in that, I swear.
Yeah.
Why is Augustus important to study ancient Rome?
Yes. Why is Augustus significant to ancient Rome?
So is that the assignment later? Is there an assignment later, or is this?
No, this is
Really?
trials. Preliminaries.
Okay.
Because you've already done your 2, and then your 3rd assessment is preliminary.
Okay.
So
okay.
basically, you guys are in a very end. It was a struggle at the start, but now you guys are sort of in that nice position where you don't have to do anything else for ancient
Yeah.
except for study.
Cool.
So it's
Cool,
difficult
cool,
at the
cool.
start, but it gets better at the end.
That's a great.
All right.
Figure known as Augustus is a figure often overshadowed by his great uncle and adoptive father, Julius Caesar. He was the man who brought about the downfall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. This video will be split into 5 sections, where I examine his personality, early life, rise to power, achievements, and my thoughts on what we can learn from him. I'll mention that Augustus was actually called Caesar by his contemporaries, but I'll be referring to him as Octavian or Augustus to avoid confusion. Augustus was described to be ambitious, intelligent, a man who can be cruel, but also wise and fair. His cruelty is mostly attributed to his behavior during his ascension to power. He killed anyone who posed a political threat to him, including the 17-year-old Caesarion, who was allegedly the son of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. It is possible that Augustus showed no mercy to his enemies after seeing how Caesar's assassination was committed by people that he had spared.
Why do you think he killed Caesarion?
Power.
Power, but let's expand it out.
Caesarion was the actual heir to the throne, making him more of a threat.
Exactly. People could rally around Caesarion and say, no, he's Caesar's successor rather than Augustus. Augustus is a very shrewd and clever man, okay, but he's absolutely brutal in getting what he wants.
After consolidating his power, Augustus turned into a fair and moderate ruler. During his rule, Rome was transformed into a stable and prosperous empire spanning from modern-day Portugal to Syria. Roman historian Suetonius had this to say about Augustus. He was unusually handsome and exceedingly graceful at all periods of his life, though he cared nothing for personal adornment. His expression, whether in conversation or when he was silent, was calm and mild. His teeth were wide apart, small and ill-kept. His hair was slightly curly and inclining to golden. His eyebrows met. His complexion was between dark and fair. He was short of stature, but this was concealed by the fine proportion and symmetry of his figure.
So he totally had a bit of a crush, eh?
Yeah, I mean,
Unibrow.
oh, he's so cute.
Oh my god.
I love a good unibrow. Now, the thing that you have to remember with the ancient sources is basically anyone that comes after Augustus, they're falling over each other to praise Augustus. Okay? The reason being is Augustus is the first emperor that we recognize. And they're all trying to get some form of legitimacy by likening themselves to Augustus. It becomes fair game to pick on the emperors after Augustus. Okay? Tiberius, the emperor that comes after Augustus, is not a particularly liked man. It becomes acceptable to sort of keep on picking on him. The ones that come after Tiberius are certainly largely unliked, so it's acceptable to pick on them, but you never get to pick on Augustus, because he's basically your dad of the state. Okay, you don't get to pick on him. Okay?
He's the boss.
Was Tiberius named after the river Tiber?
No, Tiberius was named after something else if memory serves, but I honestly can't remember. I know his name when he was before he was emperor was Little Boots.
Really?
Yeah, because the soldiers, he was born in a military camp, and the soldiers gave him Little Boots.
Aww,
Yeah.
That's cool.
Wholesome.
It is
That's
very
cute.
wholesome.
It's heartwarming.
Very wholesome. And he actually comes back, the soldiers end up mutinying when he first becomes emperor. And he goes back to those same soldiers, and the soldiers still remember him as Little Boots.
Yeah.
So they put down their arms and they refuse to fight him.
Aww.
The sad part is he goes around killing all the leaders of said mutiny, but the large part of the soldiers survive.
But still,
Yeah.
it's heartwarming.
Octavian was born on the Palatine Hill in the city of Rome on September 23rd, 63 BC. His given name was Gaius Octavius Thurinus. His family name was Octavii. They were a respected plebeian family, but later became patrician thanks to their connections with Julius Caesar. Octavian's mother was Atia, who was the nephew of Julius Caesar, making Caesar the great-uncle of Octavian. Octavian's father was also named Gaius Octavius. His highest achievement was becoming the governor of Macedonia. He died in 59 BC, when Octavian was just 4 years old. Octavian grew up with formal aristocratic training, learning how to speak both Latin and Greek, and also taking oratory lessons. He first caught the attention of Julius Caesar when delivering the funeral oration for his grandmother, who also happened to be Caesar's sister. After Caesar defeated Pompey in the Battle of Pharsalus, Octavian was 15 years old, and Caesar appointed Octavian as the prefect of Rome. Octavian would accompany Caesar on many trips, including a campaign to Hispania. Caesar later sent Octavian and some of his friends, including Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa and Gaius Maecenas, to Macedonia to study. He had also nominated Octavian to become the master of the horse, basically the second most powerful position in Rome after the dictator himself.
So one of the important things to remember about Roman families is when you are adopted into a family, formally, it's as if you actually never belonged to the other family in the first place. Okay? For example, when Octavian is adopted into the Caesar family, it's like he's always been a Caesar. Okay? So it's like their blood just suddenly turns into that way. So it's a very interesting way to look at adoption, very different from the way that we look at it today.
You shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, I mean, technically.
Unfortunately, this promotion never came. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, Caesar's will dictated that he will adopt Octavian as his son and heir, and therefore all of his estate and power belonged to him. Octavian immediately sailed for Rome, despite his advisors telling him to hide in Macedonia. When Octavian sailed back to Italy, he learned about the contents of Caesar's will and decided that he will carry on Caesar's name and political legacy. He changed his name to Gaius Julius Caesar and claimed 700 million sesterces that was supposedly kept for a potential war with Parthia. Even though
700 million sesterces is literal billions of dollars nowadays. Okay, so he's quite rich when he inherits Caesar's wealth. Like, he inherited what was meant to be spent on a war. Wars are expensive. Okay?
Though he was just 19 years old at the time, he demonstrated strong leadership skills, and with his newly acquired funds, he was able to raise a small army on his march through Italy to Rome. Many of his soldiers were Caesar's veterans. When Octavian arrived in Rome, the situation was complicated. Mark Antony granted amnesty to the assassins, and two of the main assassins, Marcus Brutus and Cassius Longinus, fled to the eastern provinces and assumed control there. Mark Antony was consul, but he had a terrible relationship with the Senate. During this time, Octavian continued to build his private army, even winning over 2 of Antony's legions with monetary incentive. After his consulship ended, Antony decided that Rome was getting too hot for him, and retired to Cisalpine Gaul to be a governor. However, after getting to Cisalpine Gaul, the man in charge, Decimus Brutus, a different Brutus by the way, refused to give up the province. Antony then began a siege. Decimus Brutus was one of Caesar's assassins, therefore the Senate was on his side. Peace talks failed, and the Senate declared Antony an enemy of the state. The Senate didn't have a sizable army to fight Antony, but Octavian did. Octavian agreed to team up with the...
So Antony, if you don't know, was Caesar's basically right-hand guy, his lieutenant. Okay, so when Caesar dies, before they knew that Octavian was the successor of Caesar, because that wasn't automatically apparent, okay, Antony was the go-to guy for what we call the Caesarian party, okay, the party of Caesar, okay? Party of Caesar, exactly right. Okay, yeah, Antony the idiot, the guy that keeps on trying to put the crown on Caesar, okay? Yeah, he's not a complete idiot. He's quite smart. He's a fantastic military general. He's just not a great political player, okay? And he's not subtle at all. For example, one of his main opponents, you may have used this guy actually in some of your sources for your assessment, Marcus Tullius Cicero. He basically gets sick and tired of Cicero, finds him, has his hands cut off, and nails his hands to the Senate door.
So you can stop writing.
It's romantic.
Yeah. He's not subtle at all. So for Antony, he's always like, fear is always the best option. Octavian or Augustus is much more subtle. So Antony travels up to modern day France. The problem is modern day France is actually ruled or governed by someone that killed Caesar, and Antony's meant to be replacing him as proconsul or governor. That person's like, I'm not giving it over to a Caesar supporter. The Senate obviously doesn't like Antony because, you know, Antony. And this starts another civil war. Okay? Meanwhile, Octavian's just sitting there going to the Senate now has to hire a Caesar to kill one of Caesar's party. And Octavian does this ultimate like sort of flip where he goes, of course, I am just a loyal servant of the Republic. Probably not.
This could be a movie.
Could. It is a movie. There's
Really?
actually a series which I can never ever show you ever
Why?
because it's R18
Oh,
called Rome.
oh, okay.
I suggest you do not look it up.
I don't plan to, but.
Senate and both consuls of the year 43 BC went with him to Cisalpine Gaul. Antony was defeated at the Battle of Mutina, and the battle resulted in the death of both consuls. After the victory, the Senate asked Octavian.
A very convenient death of the two consuls that followed Augustus. There's a lot of talk that maybe he arranged it because basically they sent Pansa and Hirtius along with Augustus to manage the armies that were going to kick Mark Antony. And it just so happens that both consuls die at that battle, but Augustus survives.
That's fairly Epstein.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to touch that one.
To give control of his army to Decimus Brutus, Octavian disagreed and then suddenly changed sides. He demanded consulship since both consuls are now dead, and also to repeal the order that declared Antony an enemy of the state. The Senate refused, and in turn, Octavian marched his army onto Rome. The Senate didn't have an army, so they were forced to comply with all of Octavian's demands. Meanwhile, Antony had formed an alliance with a man called Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, who controlled the province of Hispania. Instead of fighting them, Octavian decided to join them, forming the Second Triumvirate. They set in motion a series of proscriptions where 300 senators and 2,000 equites were labeled as outlaws and all of their possessions confiscated. This was not exactly an ethical thing to do, but they probably did this to make some quick cash for their upcoming war with Brutus and Longinus.
Now, prescriptions are particularly important, and it's one of the things that gets Augustus's name cursed, okay? And one of the reasons that he becomes very loathed and hated amongst the upper class of Rome, because he basically just goes and says, all these people, they're traitors. He starts killing off and banishing huge amounts of the upper class, and for every family that he declares a traitor, by Roman law, whoever declares that person a traitor gets their money if the sentence is carried out. So it's a big economic incentive. Okay, and he does this twice, if memory serves.
Around this time, Caesar was elevated to the status of a god, and Octavian added Divi Filius to his name, meaning the son of God. Octavian and Antony set off to fight the assassins. The decisive battle of Philippi in 42 BC resulted in the suicide of both Brutus and Longinus. The triumvirate then divided up the provinces of Rome. Octavian got the western provinces, while Antony got the eastern provinces. Lepidus was the weaker man in the triumvirate and ended up getting only the province of North Africa. In 36 BC, a conflict in Sicily.
If you're serious about your business, you need to build systems. And you have to find a great tool. So my biggest struggle always
resulted in Lepidus's men defecting to Octavian and the expulsion of Lepidus from the triumvirate. Now the empire was divided between Octavian and Antony. There were some efforts of compromise between the two men. For example, Octavian gave his sister Octavia to Mark Antony to be his wife. However, when it comes to political power, there can only be one sun in the sky. Antony eventually sent Octavia back to Rome and instead focused on his relationship with Cleopatra, who he has been boning for quite a while now. Octavian used this act to spread propaganda saying how Antony has lost his Roman ways. Octavian's efforts succeeded, and in 32 BC, the Senate declared war on Cleopatra's regime in Egypt, which basically means that they declared war on Mark Antony. After Octavian and his...
I apologise.
So they can't post
As if I
it.
haven't said worse.
No, I'll still post it, because you know what, we're seniors for goodness sake. You know, and we realise that the context of it it's in. I apologise for the language, I actually didn't realise it was in there. But basically what you have now, okay, is you have the second triumvirate. Can anybody tell me, who are the three people in the second triumvirate?
Lepidus, Octavian, and Antony.
Mark Antony, okay? So Lepidus is the weakest. He tries to seize power for himself, okay? There's actually a conflicting story. Some people say he tried to seize power. Other people say Augustus framed him, okay? But either way, all of his men defect from him. They go to the other side, and Lepidus is removed from the triumvirate. So then it's just a duumvirate, Mark Antony and Octavian. Okay? And we are basically seeing this civil war. Octavian sits in the west, Antony in the east. Okay? Pardon me? Close enough. Yeah.
His generals won the naval battle of Actium. Cleopatra and Mark Antony committed suicide, leaving Octavian as the most powerful man in the Republic. Octavian did not become dictator immediately. He had to obtain his power piecemeal. After a series of political maneuvers known as the First and Second Settlements, Octavian was able to consolidate power under the so-called Principate, which is basically a dictatorship that preserves some illusions of a republic. To avoid looking like a dictator, Augustus stylized himself as Princeps Civitatis, meaning the first citizen of the state. During this time, Octavian changed his name to Imperator Caesar Divi Filius Augustus.
Let's test your Latin again.
Well, don't do that.
Okay?
Wait, I got it.
Imperator.
Authority.
Emperor is our modern day English one. We can just say basically great conqueror or something like that. Okay? Caesar is just a name. Divi Filius, son of God.
August.
August, the month.
Oh, yeah.
Can anybody remember what that name actually means?
Bloody cold.
Bloody cold. Illustrious one.
Oh, yeah.
Illustrious one, or the illustrious one.
So
Okay.
August the month is the illustrious month.
Yes.
What does illustrious mean again?
Illustrious means great, basically, or intelligent, genius, things like that.
The worst
Ah.
month, so stupid, so cold.
So the great month.
Yeah.
Okay, August is
Okay.
actually a good month.
So his name has undergone several changes, and it makes him quite awesome, basically.
In the year 19 BC, Augustus was officially given Imperium Majus, meaning supreme power. Augustus ushered in a golden age for the Roman civilization. Roman economy, arts, and agriculture flourished. The Roman Empire continued its expansion under Augustus, conquering territories in modern-day Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, Hungary, and Serbia. Augustus was able to negotiate a temporary peace with the Parthians, who had been at war with Romans for
Greece.
Can anybody remember what in modern day country Parthia is?
Greece.
No.
No.
Persia, which is now Iran.
Ah.
Yes. Okay. So the Parthians and the Romans, they have this incredible historic rivalry where for the next hundreds of years, even though there's dynasty changes and Parthia changes its name a couple of times, they still remain constantly at war with each other. Okay?
Kind of like how subconsciously Rome doesn't like kings.
Yeah. Yeah, subconsciously, Rome doesn't like kings. Also subconsciously, they really hate the Parthians. Okay? And I'll end with a famous story involving Parthians. I think I might have actually told this one before. Did I tell you what happened to a member of the first triumvirate, Cursus, when he went to Parthia?
Nope.
So, historically, one of the reasons that the Romans hate Parthia is one of the members of the original triumvirate, Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, went to try and conquer Parthia. The Parthians absolutely decimated him. They took a couple of the Roman eagles, which are the standards, and then for Crassus, to punish him for his love of gold, they tied him down to a chair, opened his mouth, and poured molten gold down his throat to kill him.
Ew.
Yeah.
Nice.
Look, gold is great, but don't pour it down people's throats.
Bit of a drink.
Bit of a drink, yeah, bit
It's a terrible drink.
It's a terrible.
You'll die.
Other than that, girls, have a lovely day, and I will see you tomorrow.
Okay, that's the end of the Augustus lesson.
Cassar Productions.
And that's the end, yeah, that's a good one, sir. Cassar Productions with your director, Vivian Cassar. And apparently, who's staring Sean through. Okay, thank you.